to plan and plant your garden. This video we're going to cover how to read a seed packet, how to actually plant your new seedlings, and just some information on why you might want to versus planting or buying transplants, although we do have those available as well. Okay, let's get started. Why would somebody want to start their own seeds? Couple reasons. It's fun. It's kind of cool just to see something growing that you've planted from a seed in your own home. It's a great kids project. My kids love to help me plant all of our peppers and tomatoes and flowers that we put out in our garden every year. So it's just kind of a cool learning experience for them and for me. Another thing would be that it is a little bit cheaper probably to start your own seeds if you're on a budget, or if you're just looking for ways to kind of save a little bit of money. Planting your own seeds is a little bit cheaper than buying an already produced plant. We're going to go on to how to read the seed packet that you've purchased. We have 3 different seed companies that we work with. We have Seed Savers, Botanical Interest, and Lake Valley. They all have the same general information on the back, but it can be a little bit tricky to find exactly where they are on those particular packets. There's a few things that I always look for on the back of a packet to make sure that I'm buying what I think I'm buying. Every packet is going to have a description of the plant that the seed will produce. That's usually at the top, or it's usually right after the name somewhere. Some have more description than others. I really like Botanical Interest because they have an awesome description section. The other really important thing that I look for is the planting instructions. The seed companies have gone to a lot of trouble to figure out what timing you should use for planting your seeds, and then also planting out your transplants once those seeds have grown into a big beautiful plant for you. Most of the tomatoes and peppers are going to be started in that 6 to 8 week range before your last average frost date. And that information can be found right in the middle of the Lake Valley packet. And it also is very clearly marked on the Botanical Interest packet. It's really easy to find on the Seed Savers. It's under this little green heading here, so it gives you all the really pertinent information. And then the other thing that I always look for is to see how far down into the soil these particular seeds want to be planted. Some seeds need light to actually germinate, and so those seeds just want to be kind of pressed down into the soil. Some seeds need to actually be covered with soil in order to germinate. They do not want or need the light. And so each one of these seed packets will tell you how far under the soil to plant them. Usually it's only like 1/8 to 1/4 inch, so just a little dusting over the top. So that's kind of how to read your seed packet. I really encourage you to go through and read all of the information on these packets. They're just chock full of great information. One little note, our last frost date generally is going to be May 15th. I personally generally do not plant my garden before Memorial Day, just because I don't want to be out there trying to cover stuff, and we really don't usually have any hard frosts or damaging frosts after Memorial Day weekend. It's totally up to you. I just wanted to go through a little bit of timeline for some of the really common planted seeds that I see. Cucumbers, melons, and pumpkins, those are going to be started only a couple of weeks prior to our last average frost date. And that's really because if they get too big in the pot, they start to get root bound and they don't transplant well. One way you can kind of get around that is by using some biodegradable pots, like cow pots or jiffy pots. That way there's very minimal root disturbance and they generally transplant out better. You can also start those pretty easily in ground, and in general our growing season is long enough to produce a good crop of fruit. Most tomatoes, tomatillos, okra, kale, cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and herbs can be planted as seeds into a pot 4 to 6 weeks prior to our last average frost date. And then most of the peppers, we really want to see those done 8 to 10 weeks prior to the last average frost date. My rule is that the hotter the pepper, once it's planted and you're eating it, the sooner they need to be planted. I personally have already planted mine at home just because I like a bigger plant. We're looking at 10 to 12 weeks prior to our last average frost date for artichoke, eggplant, celery, rosemary, and lavender. These seeds take a little bit longer to germinate and they're really slow growing. They generally also are going to need some extra help. Heat mats and growing lights on those particular ones, unless you have your own greenhouse, are really important. And then the last category I want to talk about is flowers. It's really fun to start your own flowers, but you really have to pay attention to when they need to be planted. Many of them can be planted out into the ground, but there's other ones that really need to be planted as early as 10 to 12 weeks prior to our last average frost date. So look at the back of those packets, make sure that you have a timeline. I always write mine out, and I think that's just easier to follow. Some things that I really encourage everybody to plant right into the ground are your beans, your green beans, and also like your lima beans, that type of thing. Beets, carrots, onions, really anything that's a root crop. They don't like to be transplanted. They struggle getting the roots reestablished once they're taken out of the pot and put into your garden. A few other things that are just so fast, there's really no reason to start them inside are lettuce, peas, spinach, and then also kohlrabi and corn. Corn really dislikes being planted from a pot into the garden. It would much rather just go into nice warm soil and be allowed to just be there. Potatoes are another one that do not do well being transplanted and started inside and then outside into your garden. Okay, let's switch over to actually doing the planting. We have a little bit of a supply list that I want to go over first, and then we'll do the demonstration. Couple of things. Obviously, you need your seed packet of whichever variety you are planning on doing. You need some seedling mix. This is nice to use because it's been sifted already and it has very fine size of material, so you don't have any big sticks or pieces of bark that are preventing your little plant from actually reaching the surface. You need some labels to mark what your seeds are so that you don't forget, and then it's just a mystery, and a marker to write on there. And then some type of seeding tray. I like to use our recycled ones here that we get our plugs in because they're smaller, and so you can plant a lot of plants in a very small area using something like this. There's 104 cells in here. And we have these available for you to come in and pick up. We have lots and lots on hand. And then something to actually put your planted seed tray in that's waterproof, that you can water. I like to water all my seed plants or seeded trays from the bottom so that you don't disturb any of the soil that's on top and accidentally uncover something. And then you also need a watering can or some way to get the water from your water source into your container. I also really like using some type of a binder or a notebook to kind of keep track of what you are planting, when it's been planted. Maybe if you had really great germination, you can write that down, or maybe if it didn't go so well, you can write that down and just make a couple little notes for next year. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually cut open your bag of soil, which I forgot to do earlier. And we're going to just kind of fill in the seeding tray, just breaking up any little clumps that you see on the top. There's also other kinds of seeding trays out there, like the Jiffy trays that have the biodegradable pots right in there. There's also the little peat pellets that you can get. Those are really fun. My kids love watching those just expand into the full-size pellet. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this tray up with the seeding mix. Just kind of even it out and get everything filled up. It's going to look very similar to this, nice and even on the top. Okay, so once I've got my seed tray filled, I'm going to just take my finger and make a small indent at the top of each cell. This is just going to give me a little bit of a bed for the seed to go into. Carefully pour out your seeds into your hand or into a little tray. And then you're just going to carefully place each seed, one seed per cell, into the tray until you've got a whole line of them. Oops, got two. Got that guy out of there. Okay, and then you're just going to take a little bit more of the seedling mix. Again, this is a really nice fine mix, and kind of pour it over the top. Now, I've already double checked on my seed packet to make sure that they don't need very much soil covering them. And then you just kind of give them a little pat over the top to make sure everybody's covered up. Repeat as necessary until you get all of your seeds done that you're planting for the day. And then we're going to add our water to our tray or our bin or sink or whatever we're kind of watering these into. The reason we don't like to just water right over the top is because it really moves the soil around too much. As you see on this guy, I got my tomato seed out. So we're just going to let the bottom of the tray soak in this until we see the top of the soil is nice and dark and wet all the way through. This process could take like 15 to 20 minutes, so you just kind of have to be patient until you see everything looking about that color in the soil. Okay, your seeds are all planted. Now you just need to go through, add your marker so that you can tell what they are. I like to do each row so that I can see what they are. And then we place them on hopefully a heat mat or some very warm, nice place in your home and let them grow. It's really important to not leave them dry out at all. The little plants do not like to wilt and then be watered again. It's very hard on their very, very young root systems. So be very vigilant on making sure that they're not drying out on you. And then as they grow, you also may want to consider using a grow light unless you have a very, very sunny window or access to a greenhouse of your own. Most people do not have enough light in their house naturally to really do a high quality transplant for their garden. It's really simple, really fun. But if you are not interested in doing your own seeds and you'd rather just come see us, we will have thousands of plants this year for you to choose from that are already up and ready to go out into your garden. So if you're not interested in this, don't worry, we have options. I did want to mention a couple of sites and resources that I like to use for questions and for more information. The seed company Botanical Interest has an awesome website. They have a little section on there that is called Grow and Sow Guides. They give a lot of information on how to seed your plant, but then also how to grow them on after that, and I found it to be really reliable. Of course, the back of your seed packet, as I've said several times, is a great information on there. And then I like the Farmer's Almanac website or book, and we do have the book here if you haven't been able to find that recently. And then, of course, your local garden center. We would love to answer any questions that you have as far as seeding or planting or timelines or helping you plan. We're here to help, and we really enjoy seeing all of you guys. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we do have one more video in the session, so, so hopefully we see you back again for that.